Hello and welcome to the first drama seminar from the University of Hull. My name is Pavel Drábek. I'm the Professor of Drama and Theatre Practice at the University of Hull in the School of the Arts and in the Drama Department. And I'm also the undergraduate admissions tutor for drama. This is a talk about theatre as a knowledge laboratory. Let's start. This talk is intended for people who are curious about theatre, who want to understand how it works, how it means, how it communicates with one another, why it's so much fun, and what we can learn through it, and what we can learn about it. So if you are curious about theatre, carry on. Let us start with asking a few questions, and I'll be asking you questions, and I'm asking you to consider ways of looking at theatre, what it can mean, because there is not one single answer. Every piece of theatre is different. Even one production is different on every night. Not because of errors and mistakes, these can occur, but every moment is different, and performance and theatre changes here and there. So we cannot have a single answer for what theatre is. We can only understand ways of its meanings, of its significance, and how it communicates, and how it is made. So, what is theatre? I offer a few ways of looking. Let us consider theatre as entertainment and good fun. That's very important. And of course, that's why we love theatre, as spectators, as audiences, but also as makers. And it should be entertainment and should be good fun. But why do we enjoy it? What is it that makes it good fun? Is it just the stories? Or is it the jokes? Or is it the music? Or is it the art? Probably it's everything together in one way or another. Theatre is also a profound and fulfilling experience. And it can be a profound and fulfilling experience, not only as a spectator, as someone who comes and enjoys a show, that entertainment and good fun, but it's also a profound and fulfilling experience of those who contribute to that show as performers, as writers, as creators, designers, producers, as managers, as front of house, as publicity. So this is an experience that is very wide-ranging, and it is fulfilling because it comes together in one moment in front of people, and it's shared immediately here and now with others. But theatre is also a way of understanding the world. We come to the theatre to understand or share stories. We live through stories by proxy. We watch characters go through their lives, through their experiences, and by proxy, by empathizing with them, we get to understand a little bit of the world. And we can live through those experiences without suffering the consequences for ourselves. So there is a whole world of experience and understanding that we can reach through the theatre. So theatre is also a way of understanding the world. But theatre is also an exploration of things that matter. So let us look at theatre from a slightly different angle today, not only as fun, as experience, as a way of understanding the world, but let's look at it as a laboratory, as a way in which we can explore things that matter. What are the things that matter? That's a question for the theatre makers. So what does matter to you? How can you explore it and maybe come closer to an answer, to a solution by means of theatre? Now, getting to understand the theatre is a complicated process. like everything in the theatre. And we get to understand through observation. So we look at stories, we look at characters, we look at people around us, we look at development, at the consequences, and that's how we understand or get to understand. But it's also through questioning. So we don't have to agree with the events. We don't have to agree with those things. We can question it and say, why did that happen? Why did people do this? Why did the characters decide in this way? What if they did something else? So we question, we refine our understanding. And because we are in the space of the theatre and we are not living our real lives, our daily lives, we have that quiet, we have that calm, that repose. Some people speak about the safe space. So we have the space to question without direct consequences for our lives. And that's a very wonderful opportunity. And this is a moment where we get to understand the world and our own lives and ourselves by engaging in the theatre. We also get to understand theatre through a direct experience and making. If you have ever done theatre, you'll agree with me probably that the way you understand a topic, the way you understand a play, the way you understand a character, the way you understand a story, by making, by performing it, by being in rehearsal, by showing it in front of people. This direct experience is embodied, it's full, it's part of your life. And this direct experience of making is something that is unique in the theatre and is absolutely crucial in getting to understand how theatre works, but also, by extension, getting experience and knowledge and even expertise in our own lives. And of course, we understand the theatre by experiment and exploration. So we try out things. What if we did that? What if we played with that idea, with that notion? What if we tried this sort of story? And what if we proposed a particular topic, this topic or that issue to our audiences? How would they react? What would they think? Would they enjoy it? Would they agree with it? How would they question it? How would they observe it? How would they experience it? So look at the theatre as this kind of fascinating laboratory where people come together, share ideas, question, experience, make, and explore things that matter. And because they learn from it, and because they enjoy it, it's fun, and it's a very fulfilling experience. Let us look then at the theatre as a knowledge laboratory. I would like to add here one word, which you probably may be familiar with, but I will refer to it and you may find it useful. And that's the word cognition and its derivative cognitive. Cognition is the process by which knowledge and understanding is developed in the mind. So what we are looking at is cognition in the theatre, or if you want, cognitive approaches to the theatre, where cognitive means connected with mental processes of understanding. And I'm using quotations, so the definitions from the Oxford Learners' Dictionaries. So we are looking at the cognitive processes, cognitive skills, cognitive qualities of the theatre. So let's consider a few of the examples of shows that have been done in the past few years in the drama department at the University of Hull. And let's look at how we can understand through theatre. So this was a show done a few years ago called The Yellow Wallpaper, which is a classical American short story. This was an adaptation for the stage with a remarkable physical movement. So it was very kind of dance, physically intense. and beautifully crafted as in design, visually, in lights, in costumes. So this was an exploration that was not only telling a story, but telling a story in a very imaginative and creative way. So what were the topics of exploration? It was an exploration of a classical story, of gender roles, because it's a story of a conflict, of a kind of not violent, but very intense conflict between a man and a woman. And as part of that process, they question the assumptions, the stereotypes, and the roles that people play in relation to one another and how it relates to their gender. It was also an exploration of self-expression. So how do we come to be? How do we relate to one another? How do we find our own place in the society in relation to our close ones? And it was an exploration of isolation, and it was also an exploration of mental health. And that was done beautifully by means of movement. So these three figures that you can see in front of, on the photograph are chimeras. They did not take active part in the story itself, but they were there to portray the inner life of the main character. So by virtue of this short story, a classical story by an American writer, this performance was an exploration of gender roles, self-expression, isolation, and mental health. And while the story is over 100 years old, these topics that you can explore and get to understand more through this experience are very topical and up to date. This was another show that happened, as you can see, very different in style, wildly different in style, although done only weeks apart from the other. This was an exploration. This was Gamma Gurton's Needle, which is a Tudor comedy, an English comedy from the 1560s. So written roughly at the time when Shakespeare was born. And it was an exploration of classical comedy, of farce. So kind of silly jokes, silly comedy of 4.5 centuries ago. It was an exploration of class and status. It was also an exploration of the performance space. You can see that the space is very different, and being in a window or being in a doorway or being in the center of a square is different. And also look at how the roles of people and their status as performed and even their gender is dependent on the space in which they are and how that comes to co-create, co-shape. So this is an exploration of performance space, how we exist within a space. This was another show from 2 years ago, and a very topical one written by our colleague. It was called Philomelas Sisters, and it was written for the three performers in front of you. That a tall man, Campbell Edinburgh, was the writer for this particular play, and it was an exploration which was highly topical, because it responded to the Me Too movement. So it asked questions that were very real, and this was a show that was written and created exactly within the highlights, the heyday of that movement. And it was exploring topics of violence, and fear, particular violence against women, and fear that women live through when walking through the park, through the city. So these are topics that we could explore and share with one another by means of this show. It was also an exploration through mythology. So it used the classical story from Ovid's Metamorphoses of Philomela, who went through a similar experience, but using this as a proxy to tell the stories of people now, here and now, in our world, experiencing themes, experiencing fears and violence against themselves and against one another. So this was a beautiful, poetic show, very expressive, and also very minimalistic. And you probably would not believe that it was performed in exactly the same space as the previous two examples that I showed you. But this was an exploration of a very highly topical place, of a highly topical theme. So let's think about the riches, the potential that the theatre has for voicing our concerns of today. This was another show that I did with my then first year students as part of a module. And we were looking at the stories of Cleopatra and plays written about Cleopatra and his chronicles written about Cleopatra. And as an outcome of this exploration of theatre history, but also of storytelling, we made a show, a 45-minute show that explored a number of things. Among them, cultural icons and celebrity. This was the point when a lot of talk was happening about who's going to play the next Cleopatra in the Hollywood blockbuster. So we were looking at cultural icons. Why is it that Cleopatra, this semi-mythical figure from classical Egypt, is still so big, so influential? And we were looking at celebrity and performance. We were also looking at the LGBTQI plus concerns. And as you can see on the photograph, there are performers in drag who are performing Cleopatras or other characters as a way of relating, as a way of presenting themselves, as a way of making meaning of one's own body, of one's own gender, of one's own position in the world. So this show was looking at a variety of styles of storytelling, telling the stories of Cleopatra and those that are attached to her as a figure, and also looking at different performance styles. So it started with a very conventional, let's say, narrative, then using bits of historic plays from the 16th and 17th centuries, from England as well as Spain, and ended up being in contemporary nightclub in drag. So this particular show was great fun. It was wonderfully enjoyable and fulfilling, which explored again a number of very current concerns through classical stories. This was another show done 3 years ago of Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost. And again, on the same space, arranged very differently, playing with our Gulbenkian theatre, with the Don Roy theatre that we have on the university campus. So this arrangement looked at how the audience relate widely different to the previous shows. So this was an exploration of musical gig theatre. So what the students did in this performance of Love's Labour's Lost, they put a band on stage. Some of the characters played songs. So it combined Shakespeare's comedy with gig theatre. It was, of course, a great exploration of Shakespeare as a classical text, but also comedy. How do you bring it to life? How do you make it fun? And it was great fun and very moving as well. It was an exploration of audience contact, starting from the space, but also how you engage with the audience. How can you relate or strike a rapport with your spectators? because this is something that is unique about the theatre. It is a shared experience of stories, of ideas here and now. And trying to understand how that works can probably be best done by trying, by making. So this show was testing, was looking at exploring audience contact through this performance. And it was also, of course, an exploration of performance space. And the ensemble worked with different spatial arrangements, end on stage, thrust stage, and ended up using this irregular pentagonal arrangement to make sure that everyone has equal vision, equal access, but also that this immediacy of the show comes across. So let us ask, what is theatre? What are the varieties of theatre? In this seminar today, we have looked at a few examples. We looked at the cognitive aspects of theatre, of looking at theatre as a knowledge laboratory. And this is also what we do. And this is a kind of sample of a session that you might be experiencing as a student at the University of Hull in our drama department, where we are asking questions and exploring theatre in a range of settings. So in drama at Hull, we learn on our programs with a flexible balance of performance, so production and exploratory practice. So you learn by making as a performer, as a designer, as a writer, as a producer, in all those roles that are associated with the theatre. You look at aspects of technical theatre, how it is made, how it is put together. So you learn skills of making, from acting, performing, to front of house and publicity. And of course, we look at the core studies of theatre studies and creative industries to understand history, riches, and the riches of practice, theatre and performance practice out there. And of course, our learning is very directly connected to professional and industry practice. We work in a range of settings, mostly in practical workshops and seminars that happen in a standard world. They happen on campus. Of course, during COVID years, much of this, or as much as can be, happens online for safety reasons. But we combine practical workshops face-to-face with seminars. And just like this short seminar, hopefully helps explore the ways of looking and inspires you to make and try and experiment. In this way, we blend theatre, performance with theory, and we don't really divide the two. Practice and theory happens hand in hand. So we blend the methods, the learning settings in our practical workshops. So learning on our programs happens in contact with lecturers, with industry specialists, but also, of course, in rehearsals. So you have access to our facilities, to our rehearsal spaces, to our theatres. So providing that you follow our health and safety measures, our safe working practices, you can book the spaces and explore with your schoolmates. So let's keep asking, what is theatre? How can we understand the world through the theatre? How do we relate to the theatre? How can we participate? And how can we make theatre? So there are a few questions that I would like to explore, either on my own, with you, or with some of my colleagues in our next sessions, such as, how does theatre mean? So what are the ways and techniques in which theatre makes meaning? And again, there will not be one answer, but we will hopefully get to understand the variety and the riches of ways and techniques in which theatre means and makes meaning. Another question, which is very relevant: can theatre change the world? Can we, as theatre makers, influence the world better, to make it better? Seemingly, the answer is yes, but how can you do it? How can this be done? We have spoken about theatre as an intense and fulfilling experience, as a knowledge laboratory. So how can this knowledge, this experience, that exploration contribute to changing the world to make it a better place? And the third question, and far from the last, is how can we use theatre to process our own experience? So how can theatre be a tool of self-understanding? Or how can we use it to explore what we live through, what we mean, what we are, and how we relate to one another? So these are only a few questions that I'm offering for our next sessions. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your interest. And if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to drop me an email at p.drabek@hull.ac.uk. And of course, if you have any questions about the programs that we offer. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to our next seminar.